Okay, we already talked enough about materiality. The question I have here is, can you redefine materiality in a different way in the age of automated controls and et cetera, et cetera? Other area that is quite popular, I don't like it too much personally. You know, the problem with fraud research is that if you do a nice model that detects fraud and doesn't find any, you don't know if there was no fraud or your model stinks. So I don't like this kind of study, although several of my students did fraud dissertation. I'm going to just do a little graph here for you to explain something that I mentioned before, but people always get confused, and when you talk with people in industry, they really don't understand this. This is your stream of transactions. You do some nice analytics and come up with a fraud detection or exception detector, which is coefficient 91. If it's larger than 91, you think that this is fraudulent. If it's smaller than 91, you think it's okay. So this is 91. This is 9%. This is 81%, using your output. Now, all these prediction models have defects. Okay, they are not perfect. Statistics. Okay, so they generate false positives. So you're getting here a lot of positives. These are the positives, meaning the effect exists. And some of them are really true. Some of them are false positives. You went to investigate and realized that that thing wasn't really a fault. Now, at the same time, you have the opposite. You have a lot of negatives, meaning you don't think that they are wrong, but some of those are false negatives. Now, companies always complain they are getting too many false positives. Easy to resolve. You just move here this to 93% in your objective function, whatever you're doing. So you reduce your false positives, but what are you doing then?
Some false negatives.
You're increasing your false negatives. Okay, this can be a little bit dealt with multivariates and etc., but don't resolve it someday. So people have to always remember, when you reduce your false positives, you are increasing your false negatives. Now, I just refereed an article for the Accounting Review. And this article is a very intricate machine learning article. I can share it with you. After 2 reviews, I accepted it. Let's see. And I think I saw the other referees refereeing, so the paper will be accepted. Maybe some little changes on it. The analytics are so complex, I had a lot of difficulty. I actually refused to review it first. I said, should send it to Alex, he's a better person. But that's not what the editor wanted. So I finished up working on it. Very difficult to referee. But this guy was dealing with predicting fraud in financial reporting. And he had a sample of around 15,000 observations. And he had 50 acknowledged fraud cases. So to create a prediction model of fraud for 15,000 out of 50 is non-trivial. Okay, you're trying to dig into very, very sparse evidence. We have the same problem with our credit card project, but we have 15,000 anomalies as opposed to 50. And so he does all this pre-processing and etc. And I thought with myself, oh my goodness, this is not going to work. And I didn't think it worked, but why did I accept the paper? because I thought he was using interesting methods. He was exploring things that other people haven't done. And other people can pick up. I picked up methods of jackknife, for example, to basically was replicating populations, or making the 50 be much more than 50 by cutting little slices of it. Really nicely done. From other literatures, I think he invented a couple of them. I think I know who the authors are. At least I know one. But really interestingly done. But I don't believe the results, because this threshold here is very, very small. You can't extrapolate well for a solid model out of 50 fraud cases. The other thing, by the way, how did he know that they were fraud cases? He did what he did. He looked at basically comment letters and SEC reports that acknowledge fraud. Okay, so those fraud cases were real fraud cases. However, for one little problem, for every fraud case, how many fraud cases go unreported and unidentified? So he had a lot of positives, a few positives, but I bet you that they had a lot of negatives, false negatives. Interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. I thought it was very interesting. So, you know, this is not my favorite area, but I think the methods are good to work on. Okay, one more. We have about 10 more minutes. So, one I wanted to talk about this. Remember, we talked about, and by the way, this name is made up. It's my name. Because about 20 years when I was in Bell Labs, I tried to do a study like that and I was shut down. So I'm still persisting on this study. Okay, what do you do in analytical review? You basically, at the beginning of the engagement, you calculate ratios, look at the trend of ratios, and try to compare your ratios to other company ratios in your industry. What's the problem with that? That consolidation is an obfuscator. Any company that have more than one line of business, consolidation basically breaks down the relationships. You know, GE had 40% GE capital. You can't compare them with an other company, okay, that is manufacturing. Yeah, financial manufacturing with a different set of products. So how do you deal with this problem? The other problem that I see is like the literature bankruptcy prediction. The literature bankruptcy prediction, in a lot of articles in bankruptcy prediction, deal with companies that went bankrupt. But how many companies really went bankrupt, but they are not bankrupt? Because the day before they have to file Chapter 11 or Chapter 7, another company buys them. Or they basically merge in very adverse conditions. So what I call them de facto bankruptcies. And you need an algorithm to identify the thing. If you do that, you finish up with something much more reasonable, same kind of thing as fraud cases. And so my idea of this thing is, first, you don't work out of consolidated company. You work out of sectors. So GE's X-ray business will compare with an other X-ray business. Now, this is very tricky. Why is it very tricky? Because auditors are forbidden to use data of their clients and other clients. And that's a terrible rule, by the way. As far as the data is not divulged to third parties, using it internally. And we are going to argue against that. That's actually one of the things we are going to do in ASAP. Actually, the ICPA is going to do that, although the firms don't want it. I don't know why they don't want it. But it's a big problem we have when we work with CPA firms. We don't get the data from the other clients. Although some of the clients allow you to use their data. So let's say KPMG, just an example, or PwC. If they sign a contract for auditing a firm. And in the contract, there is a clause saying, we may be using your data for analytics with your permission. And then you go and ask permission. If you're looking at what Yoon is doing with weather data, she's actually working with the data that the client allowed to be used, provided the data. Okay, so it's possible. So my idea here on this study, and I know someone who is very interested in doing that, is improving ratio analysis by creating sectorial comparative benchmarks and comparing by sector using FASB 8 sector reporting data and adapting. So have you noticed, I talked about bankruptcy and I say adapting the data. Okay, using pseudo bankruptcy. I talked about fraud and I talked about detecting fraud, calling fraudulent companies, some companies that are not officially fraudulent. And now I talked about comparing sectors that you are interpolating numbers. And there is a thing in finance they call pure play. And the pure play is a company that works in only one sector. And so this project, which is a very interesting project, probably usable by standard setters, would be to choose one sector, probably one that's easy to do, manufacturing of something that has a large sample, but pretty pure play type of thing, shoes or whatever you're working on, and creating a comparison standard, and then using it for ratio analysis and for detection of anomalies. So it's pedestrian a little bit, and is actually pretty complex in other way. I know a CPA firm very interested on this problem. Okay, so this is also an internal control project. So these were some of the ideas, and the other ideas are these guys, which also interpolate with this. So you have a couple of weeks to think about this. And do it alone or do it with a partner. And in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from now, Chow, you need to give me a little proposal. Doesn't have to be very big, but would be the introduction that shows why this problem is interesting, like you would write the introduction of a paper. Okay? And if you don't do it very well, great opportunity to learn something. And I'm not totally tied up to these projects. You can talk to Chow with me about any other project. And the one project I didn't talk here, but I already mentioned to them, we have this project of visualization with the Volga Alliance. And if you guys get more than a couple of MIT students wanting to do that, you need to split up and have two projects. Okay, but it's not, you don't have to, if you're an MIT student, don't need to have to work. Okay, are you hot enough? Is this place boiling? Or no? Is it hot? Or I'm only one that is hot as me? Is it hot? It's hot. Yes or no? Yes. Okay, one more thing. Next class is going to be continuous auditing. We have 5 articles on it. Chow will be sending them off today.